All right, welcome to the show. I got with me Chip Pedersen. Man, how the heck are you?
I'm doing really good. A little tired. We're in crunch mode right now, and I just got back from France, but I have a lot of caffeine, so I'm hanging in there.
Awesome, awesome. The Coke Zero. That's a
Yes.
little plug for Coke. Maybe
Yeah.
they'll
Send me
maybe they'll
something, please.
yeah. I doubt it. Oh well, it's fun thought. So before we get into what you're working on and all that, man, let's get to know you a little bit. What's your history with games?
Um, I've been really gaming all my life. Luckily, my mom was a science teacher, and she had access to, believe it or not, a teletype. That was the computers back then. There wasn't desktop computers, so this is about 1973, 74. And I started playing. She'd bring me to school on weekends because she was working, and she introduced me to it. And I was playing like games called Hunt the Wampus and Zork and Adventure, and it was all teletype. There was no monitor, so you would type in go south, go east, and then a little story would come play out. And so that just fascinated me from the beginning. And so then it was that to arcades. And I still remember I was in seventh grade and I was playing the Star Trek game, and I went, I want to do this. I don't know what it is, but I want to do this. And then my senior year, I got TSR 80s, and so I started playing around with them, and was always kind of closet computer person because I was an artist. I thought I was going to be a book illustrator. Then in college, I got a Commodore 64, and then started gaming on that. And Seven Cities of Gold. I don't know if you ever heard of games like that by Dandy Buttonberry. He's a famous Activision game designer. Stayed up all night playing games like that. Almost lost my girlfriend, who's my wife now, 26 years. 30 years later, she'd come visit me, and I'm playing Pirates and Silent Service, and she's like, I've come visit you, and you're sitting there playing video games. I'm just like, and now it's like, things haven't changed, hon. So I've been gaming for a long time. And with three boys, continuing that on. They're gaming too.
Yeah, very good, very good. Do you have a favorite a favorite game from back then?
Um, I really liked the original Prince of Persia. And that's because the way the movement was so awesome. He actually, I don't know if you know the story, he rotoscoped his brother from film. And so the movement was really great of him running, and he actually wrote a book on it, of how he developed it. And it was just so great to play that and jumping, and I just felt alive in that game. And so that was one of them. I have too many to count, but that was one of them I would say was an awesome game for me that just kind of changed things.
I see. Now, when you say original, I'm thinking I played that, but probably I played it on Game Boy. Would that is that? Do you know if that's correct?
It's the 2D one.
Yeah, yeah. Where you go
Yeah,
and find your sword and then you die almost immediately.
yeah, and you fall through the floor and you got to hang and jump and stuff. Yeah, so
Oh, well, very cool, man. That's yeah, that I was pretty young playing that game. I would get to the sword and then I would die almost immediately. Like I would always drop to my death or something like that.
and that's yeah, that was the thing to keep on. I remember playing it once when my son was about 3, and he patted me on the shoulder and he goes, "It's just a game, Dad. It's okay. It's just a game." I'm like, "Okay, thanks, thank you."
Oh, perfect. So it's good to know that those games making us angry hasn't changed because we
No,
just picked up the new Call of Duty and my son was like going ballistic last night. I'm like, "Hey man, this is supposed to be fun."
right,
So I don't know. I think I came up with a little tagline for Call of Duty. The Call of Duty, the most fun while I've had angry,
yes.
or the most fun I've had while angry. But well, that's great, man. So let's talk about like how did you how did you get into the gaming industry? Like where did that start?
I got really lucky. Gaming kind of found me. Um, so I first started. I started at Apple. I was back in the 80s, late 80s. I was working for Apple in the R&D group, and I was actually helping train the engineers. And one of the things I did was I started using their tools. I said, you're not using your own tools to teach your people. So I started to build things. And because of my art background, and they had a lot of scripting tools, I could build things. And they're like, you do that now. You do that now. So I started to build tools and get into it. So that got me into software development. And one of the funny stories along there was I was working on, I was playing SimCity, the original SimCity, and I found a bug. And I called them up and said, hey, I found a bug. And they said, thanks. And they said, where do you work? And I said, Apple. And they're like, hey, we're trying to get color version of SimCity out. And I knew a guy in R&D who was working on color, and I put them together. And they got the color version working in a week. And the next day, I got a package full of every SimCity game. And I started talking to the guy, and ended up, I thought he was just the support person. He was the co-owner. And I asked about getting into gaming, and he said, you're in a better position working at Apple. Stay at Apple. You don't want to get into gaming. So I said, okay. But then Apple went on to Anderson Advanced Development Group, and so on. I was building interactive software and working with artists and rotoscoping video into games. And my partner I worked for said, I want to walk in and see a project and not know if it's the latest game or one of our products. So I started building these things and with a team, and I could communicate with the engineers and the artists. And someone said, I'm at a conference, said, you'd be a great producer. And I'm like, what's a producer? And they told me. And then it was like serendipity. Not even a month later, I got a call from Microsoft, and they said, hey, we're starting a games group. Do you want to come work here? And I said, yeah. So I started a Microsoft Game Studio in April Fool's Day, 96. So I thought, is this a joke?
Yeah.
And it was less than 50 people. And then within a matter of years, they, zoomed up to Xbox. I worked on the first Xbox. I was an Xbox sports group. Did that for many years, and then I went to work at Activision. I'm from Minnesota. That's where I am right now. You can't tell in this room, but it did snow this morning. But I love it here. And I worked for Activision Minneapolis for a number of years and shipped a number of titles. I shipped over 100 titles on probably every platform. And then I went out on my own, did my own studio for a little while, and now by day, I work for Concrete Software. I'm their studio director, and they're a mobile game studio with about 25 people. And then at night, I have my own indie studio called Frostbit Studio, where I do my own indie games. So that's kind of how I've been doing it.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about just your work on the Xbox and what
Yes.
and what that was like? Like, that's super that's super intriguing to me. Like, what role did you play, and what was some of just the beginnings of that like?
That was huge. Like, a new console doesn't come along, and I was working in an online games group at the time, and I don't know if you remember a game called Asheron's Call. It was an MMO.
I don't.
That came out of that group, and I was working with, all the producers reported to me at the time, and Xbox came out, and I was playing hockey with the sports group, and they said, hey, Xbox is coming out, we're going to make a hockey game, you should come over and be the producer. And I went to my boss and said, I want to move to the sports group, and they said, no, you can't go. At Microsoft, you actually have to get permission to interview. And they wouldn't let me interview, they wouldn't let me leave for 6 months because they said, we need you in this group. So after 6 months, I was still playing hockey, and the test lead of Xbox Sports said, we still haven't found a producer. And I took that as a sign, and I went back and I said, I've been here 6 months, let me go. And they let me go. And because they were like, why do you want to go? You're already at this level, you're going to drop down to a producer. And I said, just like you said, a new console doesn't come along, every day. I want to be there when this happens and work on it. And it was, at first, they were just big computers. There wasn't even a console. So we were like building this thing on these put together PCs that would fry out and change all the time. We'd get new memory cards every week and new hardware. And then finally we would get these kits, and the first kit, and they were like see-through. And I was working with developers all over, and I'd have to go through security, and everybody's like, what the heck is this thing? And they would check my bag, and I'm like, it's the new Xbox. And they were just like, oh my God, and all the security people would run around and look at it. And But yeah, it was great. It was a crazy time because not only were we building games, but the hardware was changing constantly. So you'd get all your art just right, and then they'd put a new a graphics processor in there, or they change how much memory you had, and you'd have to redo everything. And it was fun and crazy. It was the hardest thing I ever did and the funnest thing I ever did. So um, I did the first hockey game called NHL Rivals for it, and it started with 2 people, Alan Shen and I, and then we slowly added on people in pre-production, and by the time we finished, we had over 60 people, over 2 years of our life to get that game out. So it was awesome.
Was that a launch title, or did it come out after the system was released?
It was supposed to be a launch title, but we ran into some issues, and we came out the second year. So we
Okay.
were out. So we were a second-year title on it. But I was there. We all were playing Halo because we could play them on the kits, and so we were playing Halo and NFL Fever, any launch title we have. And I should have brought it in, but everybody who worked on it got a green Xbox signed by Bill Gates.
Oh wow.
So that's in my office at home in a special place. So yeah.
Man, that is, it's so cool to hear just kind of I mean, did you have a lot of late nights? I mean, was it a lot of work before the launch of that thing?
I had I have a futon. I had a futon in my office that I used to sleep there. For the last 6 months was a crunch. I didn't. My normal schedule was I would take my kid to school at 7 and get home. If I came home 2, 3 in the morning for 6 months, 7 days a week. And I remember one Saturday I had I took my kids for a walk, and when one of my son, I think he was 5 at the time, was like, "Dad, it seemed like you've been on a business trip for 6 months." And I'm just like, "Yeah, I know." And but it was tough, but that's where the magic was happening. So like at midnight when something got in, a new animation got in, or the new A got in to like for the goalie, and it's like it's working, everybody would be running around, the office, and so it was hard. It's very, very seductive, and you can get wrapped up in it. So you have to be careful. You have to really be careful with life balance and stuff. So, but there was times where it was just so cool to be there when those things came to life, and working with a team that brought it together was just like so it was great.
Well, at least your kids still called you dad and didn't start calling
Yes.
you Chip, right? Like,
Well, one thing I did do was to get the people to work on the weekends was I brought my kids in, and luckily they had a big conference room and they had like a 20-foot screen, and I had movies and Legos. And then my oldest son at that time was 12, and I told people, bring your kids in and I'll babysit them. My kids will babysit them. So I set up a daycare
mhm.
so other people could tell their wives and their husbands that they'll bring the kids in, and so they weren't trapped. And so that's one of the things I did. I did everything I could to keep people working and not feel too bad. So at times we had kids running around, and so that was my job, to ship that game no matter what. And so I set up a daycare, and so my kids were there for part of it. My kids still remember, being there with the other kids or playing Halo. So they were playing Halo Network before it was out, so they had great experiences, like stories telling all their friends about that. So they have a little street cred themselves. So.
For sure. And you had your own like little focus group testing
Oh.
testing
Oh
stuff
yeah.
before it was
It
out.
sucks, and especially kids are great because they're like, this is no fun. They don't hold back.
Yeah. Let me ask you, man, thinking about the years that you left Apple to go to Microsoft, did Halo basically follow you from Apple to Microsoft?
No, it was really interesting because I was playing when I was at Apple. I was playing Bungie games, and they were still independent. And they were in Chicago then, and then I had been transferred from. I've moved. Almost 3 of my kids were born in different states. I've moved all around, so I had gone from to California, back to Minneapolis. Apple sent me to Chicago, and that's when Bungie was big in Marathon. I don't know if you ever played Marathon by Bungie.
I have it on the 360 actually.
Uh, and so that was a big Mac game, and it was a shooter on Mac. And so then I went to Microsoft, and all of a sudden people were talking about, hey, Bungie, we're going to buy Bungie. And I'm like, I know Bungie, because I was a Mac guy at Microsoft, which was funny. That's where my gamer tag comes from too, Bad Apple. And so I was like, I'm really got familiar with these guys already. And then they bought them and came over there, and I was just like, this is a lot better than Marathon. This is awesome. So great.
Yeah, and I mean, and I the only reason I those dates are fresh in my mind, I actually watched the Halo 2 documentary last night on my Xbox One, so that's
Oh, I got to check that out.
it's very cool, man. They show a lot of the beginnings of they talk about the Xbox coming out and the guys at Bungie going, we don't even know if this thing's gonna work. We
Right.
don't know if it's gonna be a hit. And it just kind of they were the perfect match of Halo and Xbox. Those two things. I think it was Phil Spence even said at E3 last year, whatever it was like, we're here because of this game,
Right.
basically.
Well, I mean, I knew it was going to be a hit because when I was trying to get hockey done, I was running around going, guys, stop playing Halo. Work on our game. Because anytime there was a break, they'd all start playing Halo. And I'm just like, guys, I need you. Back, back, back. So, yeah, I knew I knew it was going to be something big just because it just sucked everybody in.
Yeah, they talk about that in the documentary. One of the guys they brought on as a producer for the second game, he was in the studio with a band. I can't remember who they said, and they couldn't get them to keep recording. They would disappear, and they'd be off playing Halo in the back room. And he's like, "We got to get some work done. Come on, what are you guys doing?" And then he walked in and heard the music and was like, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" And they're like, "It's Halo." He's like, "No, no, no. What is that music?" And that's
Yeah. It
so
did things on so many levels right.
yeah, it's man, that's cool that you were a part of all that. And you'll have to maybe send a picture of that green Xbox that I could put in the show notes. I think that'd be really cool. So let's talk about your current project then. What is it that you're doing now?
Well, two things. So by day, as I said, I'm the studio director for Concrete Software, which, believe it or not, has been around for 11 years doing mobile games. So they're not new.
Wow.
And they have their big game is PBA Virtual Challenge, so it's a bowling game, freemium game. But what I'm working on is, I can't talk about it. I'll just say it's an unannounced sports game that I'm really excited about, and um, I'll let you know when we can announce it. But we've been working on it for about 6 months now, and it should. I just got out of a meeting, so hopefully we'll be hitting in a couple months here, and so that's been really exciting. So we're working on a big sports title, and we got a couple more titles lined up again for the next 2 years. And then at night, I work on indie titles that, because so much of what I'm doing here is helping people build the game or communicating and facilitating building game, is I need a release myself. And so, like I said before, I wanted to be a book illustrator. So some of I think that's how we hooked up, was I put out a pixel art, and you said you liked it, and I responded back to you, and that's how we met. I've been practicing on some pixel art games, and I'm trying to make fun little games, free fun little games. And the other side of it is I'm working with my son, who's a graphic artist, and he's 24 now, and so it's been fun to be working with him on that level as the designer, and I learned to code, so I've been doing the coding, and he's been doing most of the art. And so that's what I got 3 games in development right now. One's called Lander 8B, where it's based on a lot of people don't know that when the first Apollo landed on the moon, Neil Armstrong landed it with only 8 seconds of gas left. And so that's kind of was always I always thought that was great. As I said, my mom was a science teacher, and so you're trying to land perfectly on each planet, and if you do it, you move to the next planet higher and higher and higher, and you're trying to manage your fuel, and you're trying to land it perfectly. So it's just a fun little one-handed game. We have another one that's called The Last Gunner, and you're the last one trying to save your. You have 10 shots, and you're trying to create a ricochet effect to take out as many ships as you can, and by many ships you take out, it's how many families you actually save that escape. So that's two of the games that we're working on right now, and so it's been a lot of fun. And it's hard when you work all day on games, then you go back and then you're trying to code yourself and learn code at the same time. But so that's I love it so much. That's what I do is I build games all day, build games at night, and then talk about them as well. I'm also speaking at a conference this weekend. So you're the gentleman you talked to a couple days ago from Minneapolis in Game Rhapsody, and I just went to the website and looked at it, and I said, hey, maybe we could, I could talk next year. And they're like, we have a spot Sunday. Do you want to do it? And I said, bam. So now I'm speaking Sunday at Game Rhapsody.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool to hear.
So your podcast helped me with that.
Oh, that's great, dude. That's really cool to hear. Um, so in the evenings, is it you and your son? Is that kind of the studio? Just the two
Yes.
of you?
Well, I also have a friend I've been working with for over 12 years doing audio named Randy Ryan, who has Hamster Ball Studio, and I've been working with him to do the audio.
Okay.
So, because audio to me is very important, as we just talked about with Halo, getting the audio right. So right now it's the three of us, very small, and that's kind of the way I like it.
Yeah, and are these mainly mobile games?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm building it. So right now it's working on iOS, Android, Kindle. So it's mobile.
Okay. Cool. I'll make sure you get me links to all those games so we can get
Sure.
them in the show notes. That they both sound pretty cool. That Last Gunner one sounds very intriguing. I'd like to check that out. So,
Yeah. The problem with that one is I started too big, like everybody does, and so I had to.
okay.
No, I'm paring it down. So, but yeah, it's a fun little thing.
Okay. And the sports game that you said you can't mention the name of or whatever, that's coming out with Concrete Studios?
That's Concrete Studio. Yep, and it's a
Okay.
major sports license.
Very cool. Well, hit me up when
Yep.
when you can talk about it. We'll have you back on and get some info on it.
Yeah. I'll tell you
Awesome.
the whole story about how that came together very quickly and how we got it out.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. So, what what kind of training or schooling do you have to get to where you are now?
So, as I said, I started out, I thought I was going to set the world on fire with my art and said I was never going to wear a tie and, went to the university and became an art major with my best friend was art major too. And we were thought we were going to be artists. And then once I got to school, I realized I was putting time into other things, other classes, and my minor at the time was organizational communication, and that I got more interested in that, and so by the time I was a senior, I swapped them, and it just worked out really well for me because what I really found out was when you're in business, it's all about communication. It's all about communicating verbally. Um, Email wasn't around then, but I got really when I went to Apple, I got to use it a lot, and but also just following up with people and working with people. So my big break was because I understood art and the process of art and actually working with artists, and I was a closet computer person, so I kind of taught myself how to work on computers and how computers work, that I could bridge the gap between artists and developers. And for many years, it's gotten a lot better, but it's almost left brain, right brain. They wouldn't communicate. And so when I said I fell into it, that's one of the reasons Microsoft hired me. They're like, you understand 3D, because I was doing 3D development at the time back on SGIs, high-powered computers, and they said, you understand textures, you understand sizes and everything, so you can communicate with the devs. And that's what really made me. was the ability to communicate with two different groups and bring them together under one flag to get a project out. So that's what a producer to me really is it's that person that says, come on guys, get behind me, let's go, and then you're setting the direction where the people are going. You're not, that doesn't mean you own the design, that doesn't mean it's all your ideas, it's you're helping bring all those great ideas together and leading them in the direction to get it done. Because my motto is great teams ship. There's so many teams that build things that never ship or take too long, and it's my job to get them to ship on time, on budget, on schedule. And that takes a lot of communication, a lot of working out differences, and cutting features, or trying to get features in, squeak features in. So that's kind of how I got into it, and that's what I love, because I can talk to the testers, I can talk to the artists, I can talk to dev, marketing, sales. Have a finger in all the pies that make the game going, so I'm not just one piece. And then working with them to promote them, that great ideas came from everywhere. So a great story I always like to tell is the control scheme that we had for NHL Rivals, the first hockey game, came from the artists. The artists were playing Halo, and they said, "Hey, we have this idea that with hockey that you can skate in one direction and pass in another." So we were the first game. This is dual sticks was still new at the time. Most people just had one, and so they came up with, what if you skate with one direction and you can flick with the other stick in a different direction to pass? And I'm like, that's perfect for hockey. And that changed our control scheme, and that changed the whole kind of the group thinking, like, this is our game. This is not Chip's game or the dev's game or the game designer's game. It's like, this is our game. Great ideas came from everywhere, and that's kind of what kind of helped build that team. And that's what I try to take to with all my teams, is the game comes first. Check your egos at the door. The game comes first. That's the most important thing. And people kind of get that, and they get bought into that, and that's what I want to promote, and that's what makes it fun. People coming in every day knowing that they're making a difference. They're not just a cog in a wheel.
Yeah, so I mean, basically what I'm hearing there, not only did you play the role of creating the team and building a team, but like, I love that you said it wasn't like them versus them, the devs versus the artists. Like, the ability to bring people together like that are, in working in different areas and getting feedback and that kind of thing. Man, it sounds like such an awesome experience. And
It was.
talk about being able to put out probably a higher quality product because you got everybody working together.
Right. So I'll tell you a little story. So going back once again to the NHL Rivals, the code name for the project was Cujo. For Curtis Joseph was a great goaltender at the time, and so the game was called Cujo. And we kind of took over that persona, and we became then known as Team Cujo. So then when we would go to meetings, and they would go, and Team Cujo is going to present, we'd all start barking. And some other little things, that was the team thing once again. It's like, we're Team Cujo, you don't fuck with us. And there was another project I won't, talk about, that was we were battling with for resources. And I was just like, we're going to win, and we're going to take those resources because we need them to make our game better. And so that's why we need to finish this milestone. But then here's some backstory on Microsoft. Microsoft is known for people have offices. Bungie was one of the first companies to come in there and said, no, we want an open environment. But most people have offices at Microsoft. And traditionally, dev sits by dev, art sits by art, producers all sit by producers. The game teams don't sit by each other. And we did an office move right in the middle of the game, which was, at first I was like, this is not good. It's going to shut us down for a week. And I went to the team and said, hey, I have an idea. Let's sit by each other. And that was a weird concept, because the way they did it is, if you had seniority, you got to pick which window office you wanted. And so what we did was we set it up where we went within the group and they started to say, no, I want to sit here, I want to sit here. And we had Cujo was the only team of 5 teams that sat by each other. So I had the, real high level developer gave up his window seat to have an interior seat to be right across from the artist, the animation artist, because they were working together all the time. So it was much easier for them to roll out of their office and go, hey, I'm doing this. He's like, okay. And then they would go back and forth, like, hey, can you look at the screen? And they would just, run over. And so it just changed everything when we became closer to each other, and we all could communicate better just by sitting by each other, putting the right people by each other. That helped us ship. That really helped us ship, and that was a big buy-in once again for people to say, no, I'm part of the team. I'm part of Cujo. I'm not a developer. I'm part of Cujo.
That's great, dude. Did you guys get to work on anything else, or was it just that, and then you guys had to disband?
We after we shipped, we started to we kept Team Cujo, and I got promoted after we shipped Cujo, and I took over the NBA and the NHL franchise. And so I had 2 teams reporting to me, and we still called ourselves Cujo because we had a lot of pride in that. And we worked on prototypes and started working on the next games that were coming out. And 9 months later, unfortunately, they shut down the Xbox Sports Group. And everyone, but it's interesting, members of those teams went on to are on Forza. The dev lead's now the development director for Forza. One of our tools artists worked on The Hobbit. King Kong moved to New Zealand to work with Jackson. Another of the developers is chief scientist now at Valve. Another one, great programmer, is working on the Assassin's Creed series. Another one is working on just Shadows in Mordor. So this was like, that team just went on to do great things. It was amazing. So it was a couple people started startups that went on and that bought. And so I'm very, very, very proud of that team, and I'll send you a picture of part of that team. We just celebrated we shipped on Halloween, so every year we celebrate shipping Cujo. And so everyone kind of then checks in, back in, tells them what they're working on and what they're doing. So we still stay together.
Yeah, I mean, that's a testament to what you did, man. I mean, that's, you guys still you still have communications or basically friendships. Let's call it what it is with that team.
Yeah.
And
with the industry, unfortunately, when people lose jobs, we all connect. We're like, hey, so and so needs a gig, and it's just like, because everyone pretty much is still in the industry, and it's just like, we got worker over here, or try this person, or I know somebody. So we help each other out, and that's also what keeps things going.
Yeah, well, I'm just guessing you you probably helped some of those guys keep jobs longer maybe than somebody else, because being a team player like that, probably bringing that to the table, like, hey guys, we could actually work together better than we can work divided.
And it wasn't just me. I mean, everyone had to buy into it, and so they taught me just as much as I helped them. So the artist sitting, because I would walk around and I would just plop down in a chair by the artist and say, hey, what are you doing? And they would show me, or a tester, and I'd say, tell me what's going on. Is this fun? Is this not fun? They're like, Chip, this really isn't that fun, And so then I would make sure I communicated that back on. So everyone in that group taught me so much stuff, and that's why I'm so grateful too, that it was a big sharing session. We shared everything. And celebrations and disappointments, and unfortunately broken up girlfriends and divorces and remarriages, and people getting together. So I mean, we were there for each other, so it was great.
Oh, that's cool, man. It's good to have community around you for sure.
Yeah.
So let me ask you then, what are some lessons learned along the way that you can share with us?
Um, biggest lessons I would be is like, check your ego as you're getting into the industry. It's just like, as I said, the game comes first. People want to work with other people that, are excited about what's going on and enthusiastic and not just, um, I work with some people that are just like, this sucks. Well, that doesn't help. Or this, you're looking at a piece of art and they're like, I don't like it. What don't you like about it? Come more with I don't like the color. I don't like the way it looks or the body movement's not right. And you can tell somebody's baby's ugly, but in a nice way. You don't have to be a jerk about it. And so once again, it's communication. So that would be my thing is, come in and just be like, be a team player. That's the biggest thing. Come in and be a team player, and you will go long. Because if people don't like working with you, suddenly you're not going to be working at that company probably long, or you're going to start bouncing around. But if people enjoy working with you, you're going to get invited to more meetings. You're going to get invited to more things that are going on. So I'm just like, be a good team player is a big thing as I learned. And once again, great ideas come from everywhere. And just because somebody's new to the team doesn't mean that they're raw. They could have a great idea because they'll have a different perspective, and they can look at it and go, I know haven't been on the team very long, but what's going on here? And everybody's just like, oh wow, yeah, I've been staring at this too long. I haven't even seen that. And then great vets, listen. Sometimes they don't talk a lot, but when they do, it's kind of like words of wisdom come out from you. They're sitting in their office coding away, and I try to bring that out, and they'll be like, I can fix that, and then it's just like, yes, go do your stuff, and so communication is big. Checking your ego is big, and if you're just getting into the industry and you're trying to build a game, and I just listened to your podcast last night on the way home. What was, build something small. Start out small. Don't try to build some huge RPG, some big MMO. And that's, I'm trying to practice what I preach is just building that small game. Get it out, because once you get it out, you're going to learn so much from that experience and take it to the next one and take it to the next one. And as I said before, is feature creep, great teams ship. And so as you're working on the game, you got to make compromises. Yes, I would really love that feature, but can we get it in the amount of time that we have? Can we not? And with mobile games now, and even console games, you can update it. Before we were locked down to that DVD, and you couldn't do anything with it after that. So, but now you can add to it and get a little bit out more at a time, and people enjoy that. Now it's like, hey, new things are in the game. So, and then never stop learning. Never learn. I learn everything from. As I've been lucky enough to travel around the world working with different developers, and every developer has taught me something new. A new way of looking at something, a new way of thinking, a new tool, of anything from paper tool design to a complex piece of software. Always ask questions. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. I don't. It's a cliche, but I make learning experiences, and man, I made a lot of them. But I've learned more from those learning experiences than being successful, because that's where you really learn. So when you do something wrong or you fail, but you get up, you can get up. That's the big thing. Always get up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've talked about it before on this show. My limiting beliefs were always, if if I didn't try, I wouldn't have to deal with failure.
Right.
Right. And that does not take you to a good place when
No.
you finally hit that realization that, well, wait a minute, now I'm not doing anything.
Right.
So
Take a chance.
That's right.
What's the worst could happen? They say no.
Yeah, and then you learn, and then you
Yep.
move on. You pivot, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I did want to ask you, I want to backtrack just a little bit.
Sure.
What was it like, you got Team Cujo, and then, the new guy shows up. What was their reactions like to all of a sudden being on this team that was like a team, not like Was it a little difficult to kind of um, help the new guy get involved in the team and feel comfortable and to
Well,
contribute?
that was my job. I looked at it as that my job, as if anybody new came on, is that they felt comfortable, that they were part of Cujo. So if anybody came on, the first thing they did was meet with me, and I would say, hey, I'm Chip. And this is what we're doing, and this is what we expect of you. And ask questions. Don't feel to ask questions. Come to me if you're having a problem. And I tried to have docs lined up so they could get up to speed very quickly. And so that, to me, being the producer, it was my job to make sure that everybody came on, had a good onboarding process, so they didn't feel like they were not part of Cujo, or like, oh, I'm the new guy. And yes, we tease the people coming on as, yeah, you're FMG. This is the new FMG. But after that, you know, they became, and so we would celebrate their wins too, so I try to get them a win early. So I'm like, hey, did you see what, Bob did, what Rachel did, I would try to get them a win early, and people would be like, yeah, he's already contributing, and so I did not want to build a atmosphere where, we're on Cujo and you're on the outside. We were a welcoming group,
Yeah.
that, because I didn't like the other, because there were groups like that were like, we've been around, we know what's going on. I didn't want that. I wanted the group that welcomed everybody in, because that's one of my big interview questions. When I interview people, I said, I'm having a party. What are you going to bring to my party? I want something different, because if everybody brings potato chips, brings the same music, it's not going to be a fun party. What do you bring? What are you going to bring to the party? And that's how you make better games. Make better games, become a better person, is by variety, not having the same people.
Were you looking for the answer of dip when they asked what you're gonna bring?
I get a lot of that, and I got a lot of that, and some people just didn't get that question at all. They
I've never
literally
been to
thought
a
I was asking
party.
about a party, and they're like, I would bring chips, I would, maybe a dip of some sort, and I'm just like, no, it's a metaphor. What skill set are you bringing? And then they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, I think my art style is, but yeah.
Oh, well, man, we're about to wrap up here, but I just got a couple more quick questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, what are some resources that you would recommend? Books, websites, that kind of thing.
It depends on what you're doing. So I'm going to limit it just to being a producer
Okay.
and being in production. And I'll be honest, there's not a lot of good stuff. That's one thing that, as I've gotten to a point in my career, is that I think I'm going to try to. I'd love to write a book about being a producer, or I don't need a book anymore. I'll do a website. Just stories on how to become a better producer. Um, but for websites that I go to learn, I really like Game of Sutra. There's always good articles on there. There's postmortems. I mean, that's where I learn a lot, is postmortems. Um, so Game of Sutra. Um, I'm new to Reddit, but there's great, there's indie game areas in Reddit and people asking questions. Um, the indie game dev, Touch Arcade. For me, as starting to be doing I've done these big games, now I'm trying to do the indie games, is just learning from people who have, what they like, what they don't like. So there are some, if you're going to want to be a producer, I would say also there's program, project management certification you can get. And one of the big ones I would say is it's called Agile, or it's called Scrum. It's an iterative new development process. It's been around for a while, but it's really catching on in games. And so you can become what's called a certified Scrum Master. That's really good things so just Google Agile or Google Scrum to first learn about what it is, and then you can find it in your area. To usually a lot of local universities, colleges teach Scrum classes, and you can be certified in a couple days. And that will really help you get into the industry. If you can say, I'm a certified Scrum Master, they're going to go, okay, that's something that I always look for that'll stand out. So if you want to get into production. But just working on, communication, following up, being able to be very organized, understand feature sets, understand the give and take, and communicating back and forth. And so, and I always say, show show what you can do. Don't tell me what you can do. Show me what you can do. So if you're an artist, show your portfolio. If you're a developer, show little demos you can work on. It doesn't have to be full games. If you're a tester, you can say, hey, I played the new Halo that just came out. I played the new Call of Duty came out, and I found this bug, this bug, this bug, this bug. My favorite story is I knew a guy that worked on Madden, and this guy came with a game tape. He literally put a VCR in there and goes, see, it's not doing the defense right. That guy should be over here. That guy should be over there. Hired him on the spot. So, I mean, it's just like show what you can do,
Yeah.
and that's going to prove everything. That's going to change everything.
Yeah. You didn't by chance see that bug in one of the recent Maddens where the
Little
quarterback
guy?
went flying like
Yeah, I've
30.
seen guys go flying at a little teeny linebacker. Did you see that bug too?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's bugs in games, and they always get out, and it's just roll with them.
Yeah. Yeah. When that guy hit the ground, I don't know if he had an injury or not, but he probably should have.
I should have.
30-foot drop. But so, hey, what would you tell 18-year-old Chip if he said, I want to get into the game industry?
I've heard you ask this question to all your guests, and I broke it into two areas.
Okay.
So one is if I came up, I rolled into my DeLorean and got out and saw 18-year-old Chip with his mullet and his earring, and
Yes.
said, "You're going to be in games or whatever." Part of me would just say, "Trust your gut. Trust your gut. Your gut's going to get you farther than any research that you've done." That's how I found my wife. That's how I trusted my gut on that one. Got the job at Apple. I was married 3 months later. I'm like, honey, we're moving to California. I had no idea what it was like in California. And if I didn't do that, didn't trust my gut, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today about all the wonderful stories in the past I had. So part of me is saying, just say that, because I don't want to change my life. I don't want to tell my 18-year-old self that would change my direction, because I loved where it went. I loved the ups and the downs, and I wouldn't trade my kids for the world. So I'm believing that butterfly effect. So I wouldn't want that to change. But so that's one side. The other side, I would say, learn to code. Understand how to code in some part. And so anybody doing this, I'm telling my son right now who's a graphic artist, I'm like, learn to code. Because if you can come in and not only take your artwork and be able to put it on a device and pop up and go, here's my designs right on the device, once again, that hiring manager is going to go, whoa. Because going forward, that's the new language. Before, when I was a kid, it was always like, learn a second language, which I didn't listen to. But it's like, if you can code of some sort, it doesn't have to be C++. If you know Java, HTML, a little CSS, if you just understand it, it's going to help you. You're going to go far. So I would say, Chip, learn to code earlier, so I wouldn't be struggling like I am now as still grasping concepts. But there's tons of going back to the other question, there's tons of online sites now that you can learn to code and see demos and build things. And so you got a computer now, the world's open to you.
Yeah. Awesome advice, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. What is the best way that people can connect with you?
Best way, two ways. Twitter, BadApple89, that's BADD, two Ds, APPLE 89, 89 for the year I started at Apple. And then, or Chip at Frostbit, BIT, like the computer bit, 01, studios.com. And I'll give you all that information so people can go to the website, which is under construction right now, but you can see what stuff's going on there. But and feel free to ask me questions, because so many people have helped me in my career. I want to do the same thing. Just help them going forward. Pass it forward.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, again, I appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, we will. Thanks a lot, Josh.
Yep.
And love your show. It's been really interesting. I've learned a lot of stuff, and I've connected with people online now too. So
That's so cool to hear, man. That's so cool to hear.
And that it's great that you just started yourself. This is what, episode 21 or 22?
This will be actually episode 27, I believe.
27. Okay, then I'm behind.
Well, I've got a backlog so that I can keep. I'm trying to keep a week ahead, basically.
That's
So
good. That's good.
so. But all right, man. Well, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All
See
right.
you later. Bye.